Hi guys, I'm Charlie the Charlie Book Fanatic. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do a recommendations video, and the topics for these recommendations are given on this Goodreads group that I will link down below. This is hosted by Trina and Kayla Rayne, and I will link both of their YouTube channels down below as well. The topic for this recommendations video is favorite new authors of the past year, and all of the authors on this list are female authors. And I don't know why it is, I read more books by female authors than by male authors, and the books I've read by male authors this past year didn't make as much of an impression on me as the female authors did. I have 7 authors to talk about, so let's dive straight in. The first author I want to talk about is Emery Lord. I have read 2 books by Emery Lord. I have read Open Road Summer and When We Collided. I read When We Collided first and I fell in love with it. It's a book about bipolar disorder. It's an own voices book. Emery Lord has bipolar disorder herself, and she wrote a book about this female character that has bipolar disorder, and I felt it was extremely accurate, and I rated it 5 stars because of the accuracy of this depiction. Aside from that, I read Open Road Summer, which I read after When We Collided, and I rated that one only 2 stars. Why Emery Lord is still on my list is because of When We Collided, because I was so intrigued by her penmanship and the way she was able to write about bipolar disorder and about these family aspects of the male main character in that book. But Open Road Summer had a lot of slut shaming in it, which is why I only rated it 2 stars, because I honestly couldn't stand the female main character, and I didn't really like the overall premise of the story, which was the female main character was going along with her best friend who is a pop star, and then the male love interest came along on this tour of the female pop star, and he became her opening act, and the female main character fell in love, and she started slut-shaming every single girl he ever talked with, and I really don't like it in my books. The second author I started to read books from this past year is Colleen Hoover, and I've read quite a lot of books by her. I think I read Confess by her first. I wasn't impressed with that one, so I went on with the next book, which was Ugly Love, which I really liked and rated 4 stars. Still not really amazing though. Then I read Maybe Someday, which blew me away. I rated it 5 stars, and I was infinitely impressed with Colleen Hoover's work and wanted to read everything by her, and I got why people are so positive about her works. Then after Maybe Someday, I read Slammed, which is the first book in the Slammed series, and I really wasn't impressed by that. I thought it was way too dramatic, unrealistic, and ultimately too convenient. So I wasn't impressed by that, but I think Slammed was Colleen Hoover's first work, so I won't judge her too hard on that. I still loved Ugly Love, and especially Maybe Someday, so I am definitely going to continue on reading her works in 2017. The third author is actually a poet, and that is Leav. I read 2 of her collections in the past year. The first one I read by her was Love and Misadventure, and I really liked that one, but it didn't really leave as much of an impression on me as her second collection did, which was Universe of Us, which came out at the beginning of October, and I saw it on NetGalley and decided to request an e-arc of it, and I read it, and I cried after every single poem. I did a review on this poetry collection, which I will link down below if you want to hear more of my thoughts on this incredible collection of poetry and this amazing poetess. Like, I genuinely love her work, and I will continue reading her poetry collections because she has quite a few more. She writes really simple poetry that's easy to get but still so relatable and ultimately really hits me in the feels. The fourth author is Rae Carson. I've read 2 books by Rae Carson in the past year, and those 2 books were in the same series. The first book I read was Girl of Fire and Thorns, which was the first book in the Fire and Thorns series, and I really liked that one. It was a fantasy book, and I thought it was okay, I liked it, and then I read the second book, which was The Crown of Embers, and I fell in love with it. I loved how the characters developed and how the story progressed and where it went after the first book, and I cannot wait to read the third book in the series, The Bitter Kingdom, and then move on to Rae Carson's new series, which takes place during the Gold Rush era and also has some fantastical elements to it. I definitely want to read more works by Rae Carson because I really like her writing style and the way she creates this kind of magical system with godstones in a Fire and Thorns series, and how she really makes her characters grow.
I also started reading classics this past year, and I especially started looking into Jane Austen. So far I have read 4 of Jane Austen's books.
Persuasion, Pride and Prejudice, Northanger Abbey, and Emma. I love Jane Austen's works. When you're watching this, I will be reading Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. My favorite book by Jane Austen was Emma, which is also the first book I started reading by this author. I obviously had heard a lot about Jane Austen, but I never really knew anything about her works. But I just love the time setting it is in, the way it's written. It's written so cleverly and witty, and so different from anything you would read in this period of time. And after Emma, I started reading Persuasion, which I liked but wasn't as enthusiastic about as I was about Emma. Then I started reading Pride and Prejudice, which I liked, but I liked it especially because I had watched an adaptation of this on YouTube. And then I read Northanger Abbey, which is my second favorite. This is the one I read most recently, and I think this is my second favorite after Emma, and especially because I related to the main character so much, and I thought this had a lot of things happening in it. And this has a male character in it, John Thorpe, who I really love to hate. He was so active in this novel, and I really liked that, even though I was quite annoyed with him. But I thought Jane Austen had written him so cleverly, and I will continue reading on all of Jane Austen's works. I will read Mansfield Park in December, as well as her novella Lady Susan, and eventually I will also read Sense and Sensibility, and then move on to another classics author. But I absolutely love what I've read of Austen's works right now. Then I want to talk about Rae Carson, and I haven't read a lot by Rae Carson. I've read only one book, which was Wolf by Wolf, which is the first book in the duology of the same name. This is a World War II retelling, historical fiction. It follows Hitler after he has won the war. It's an alternative history story, and I really like it. It was an intercontinental motorcycle tour, and all of these characters. And there's a fantastical element to this. The main character is a skin shifter. She can change into anyone she wants to change into. And I really love that. I normally don't like World War II stories, but this one really changed my mind about it, especially because of the fantastical element to it. It was action-packed, it was adventurous. I loved the character relationships and how the main character was trying to navigate these relationships from a point of view that really wasn't hers, because she was skin shifted into someone else, and she had to navigate these relationships with people that the actual person she changed into knew. So that was really interesting to read about. And after that ending, I need to know how this duology will end. I will definitely pick up other books by Rae Carson. I think she's also read a book called The Walled City, which I was interested in before but never picked up. So maybe I will after finishing this duology. And the last author I want to talk about is Emery Lord. The first book I read by Emery Lord was actually The Young Elites and not Legends. I was very impressed with Emery Lord's writing in The Young Elites and how she managed to craft such an anti-hero, namely Adelina. I fell in love with Adelina as a character immediately, and that made me want to pick up other series, which is Legend. I've only read the first book in the Legend trilogy, and I really didn't like it. I did not want to continue with this story, and I think it is because it is a dystopian story. I'm not really much of a dystopian reader, so I decided to drop this series and continue on with The Young Elites. So I read the second book, The Rose Society, and I like that one even more. It is my favorite book in the trilogy, and Adelina developed so much and she came so far, and I really liked where the story was going. And then eventually I read the final installment in this trilogy, which is The Midnight Star, and this ended perfectly. Emery Lord wrapped this trilogy up amazingly. She worked diversity into this. It was everything I wanted from this trilogy and even more. And that really makes me want to read other things from Emery Lord. I will not read her Legend trilogy, but I will probably write anything she writes in the future. So these are my recommendations to my favorite new authors to you. I hope you will pick up their books and enjoy them as much as I did. Let me know down below if you disagree or agree with any of these authors and what your favorite new authors from the past year are. I would love to know. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.